Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming back to yet another episode of The Gloving Paradigm. I am your host, Peter, aka LPD Dubuque, and this week, I really hope you guys are ready because this is my first interview I'm ever having on my show. And to let you guys know that I brought a very esteemed colleague of mine. I will actually consider him a personal friend of mine. We have talked quite a bit and extensively through multiple platforms, either on Discord or on Facebook. And I would like to introduce you now to Josh, aka Steamboy. How's it going, Josh?
It's going good, my friend. Despite all this crazy stuff that's happening out in the world right now, I'm just sitting here and trying to wait it out. Hopefully, I hope you're doing okay yourself.
Oh yeah, it's been a little trying, but you know what? I've sat there and was like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep throwing out applications and try to see if things are going and try to get into something. And you know what? I know it's been funny because I've talked to a couple of people about it, and everyone just wants this to be over. But at the same time, we just started, so we're just, you know, the idea for me right now is just to be patient and just wait until it's over. But I'm not going to just sit here and do nothing all day. I'm going to pursue working on my podcast even further, and with you coming on is the first step to get that going. So,
yeah, for sure, for sure. I've just basically been in the exact same boat. I spent the past 2 weeks, not only going back into the lab pretty heavy. In fact, this week I had a 3-hour lab session, which I haven't been able to do since high school. And I finally got to starting some of my tutorials. Just released my second one last night on gun concepts. Yeah. I'm pretty happy with it. I've been rewatching it to see where I'm doing well and where I need to improve. But I would say for my second tutorial, it's definitely pretty good in my opinion. Not bad.
oh yeah, I definitely agree. I watched it once you posted it, and I will honestly say your personality is just a lot of fun to watch on camera. You don't try to be super rigid and like super professional. You kind of just like be a little bit more relaxed, and when you're just, I can tell you're having fun when you're talking about it, and it clearly shows that you're dedicated to show people like, this is how it's done, this is how I think about it, and this is how I would like you to consider thinking about doing this when you're coming up with your own concepts. And that's something I always encourage as well. So it's actually really, really nice to see more tutorials coming out as well, especially from you, because I actually get really excited when I see you post a video.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so the first things we should get started is kind of give out some background. So, you know, when did you start? What got you started into gloving? And, you know, what major accomplishments have you gotten so far through your gloving career?
I'm sorry, Peter. What was that very last question?
The very last question is there any major accomplishments that you've made in your gloving career?
Okay, for sure. So, I started gloving back in 2012. I was a 16-year-old kid, and I was introduced through a friend of mine who actually passed apparently last May. I found out a little earlier this year. Bailey Liu, he was a good friend of mine back in high school, and we were hanging out at a friend's house one day, and he just says, "Hey, do you want to see something?" And I'm like, "Sure." So he takes me to the bathroom, turns off the lights, and he pulls out a pair of gloves. And he was just showing me these lights on his fingertips, and he gave me some old school figure eights, some whips, some liquid, and amazed it's kind of undercutting how I felt. It was more like I was in a moment of serenity, a moment of bliss, and a moment of just kind of understanding. It's not a moment that I can really even describe with feeling that I completely understood in that moment, that this new thing that was being introduced to me for some reason just made sense in my head. Like something clicked. I was like, yeah, like I understand this completely, and I want to understand it in its entirety, in its completeness. So I bought my first pair of gloves, and it went from there. So I've been doing it for about 8 years now, and I would say my biggest accomplishment, honestly, within the gloving community would be participating in Fable, particularly Fable Chapter 3. I got pretty close. I made it to the top 4, I believe.
Oh, right on, right on.
Yeah, it was a really fun time. It's kind of my style of competition, to be honest. I love because I've always been a movie guy,
Oh yeah.
and I've always loved like anime, and like I just always love like fantastical stuff, and like it was kind of my chance to kind of try, like, if anything, shooting back. I was 22, 23 at the time, and it was my chance to like try to make the movies that I wanted to make when I was like 16 years old, writing movie scripts in place of actually shooting movies because I didn't have the money for a camera.
Right.
And you know, back then Fable was a little bit more of the Wild West. I mean, you still had a scorecard, but the expectations of you were not as defined, so it was really fun just basically trying to experiment and see what gloving could be from a cinematic and storytelling perspective.
Oh, yeah.
So
I definitely agree with that. The storytelling aspect and the actually like bringing more of a cinematic aspect to gloving would be monumental in my opinion.
yeah, for sure. I think it's something that's going to be more prevalent in the coming years as camera technology becomes more affordable to the general masses, and as a lot of us right now, we're trying to pioneer like project videos and stuff like that. So I would say with the next couple of years, people are going to come to understand how you can tell cool stories through cinema and through gloving and go from there. And actually, I won a it wasn't a mainstream Fable competition, but they were doing a special run of the competition for Halloween, and they said it doesn't matter what you do, go balls to the wall. So I basically just pulled every trick I knew in my and managed to win first place for that one. So I would say that is probably my greatest accomplishment, at least in my eyes, and it's come out with one of my favorite project videos.
Oh yeah, and I will even tell you right now that your project videos, they're just top notch, dude. Like I absolutely just love the amount of dedication and work that you put in, clearly showing that you put in the time and effort to actually not only practice and get these concepts down, but to also take in consideration of how it's going to look on camera and how you can make it better on camera.
Dear, I can't really say anything like that would tell you exactly how I feel, but all I can say is really thank you. Especially since right now I still really think of myself as an underdog. There are, at least in my eyes, people who've done incredible things in the project field. Puppet is the first person to come to mind. He's kind of the golden standard on what we should be striving towards. But you also got amazing back in the heyday when they were still making videos and releasing them on the regular. I particularly think of this one video with Jest and Tranquil.
Oh yeah.
It was kind of like a hospital. Yeah, that's, in my eyes, that's kind of one of the golden standards that I think people often forget about, and it's often a video I kind of go back to and see like how far you can go in terms of props and set design and scenario. It's for those who haven't checked it out, definitely go take a look.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that's probably one of the things that I don't think a lot of the newcomers know. Like, I would say anyone who's joined in the gloving community in probably the last 3 years, maybe, I want to say. I don't think they are being exposed to a lot of the earliest stuff that, like, I started in 2010, and, you know, so I knew all the old G stuff. I knew about Mystic, Teardrop, Wonton, Serenade. You know, I started my career around with Gummy, you know, all that stuff. And I don't think a lot of the newcomers are being shown that, especially when it comes to the Art of Gloving videos that Amazing Lights made. Because I know they made 3 of them, and they're just as informative as as my podcast itself. And I really feel like people need to be watching those, you know, or be shown those if you're a newcomer. You know, especially within the past 3 years. If you have not seen those videos, you need to go watch them because they're extremely informative, not only on the history of gloving, but where we started and how we have progressed from there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I understand that it's kind of harder to really be exposed to those things, especially since a lot of the new stuff is on a completely different platform. A lot of people don't remember, even if they understand it on a theoretical level, but they don't understand the feeling of it if you weren't there. That really gloving used to be all on YouTube,
Oh yeah.
and it was an exciting time in a way because Amazing Lights, Orbit Light Show, a lot of these guys were releasing videos weekly, and it was something that if you were in the scene, it was something that you were waiting for every week. It was like that feeling you get when you're a kid waiting for Toonami every weekend,
Oh my god,
just waiting for that
it's
new
the
video
same.
drop.
It's the exact same feeling. I totally agree with you. It's like just waiting for a new episode to pop out on any show that you've been watching. It was literally, I wouldn't say it was the heyday of gloving, but when it came to online content for gloving, that was the heyday. It was just every week, you had Thursday Night Lights, Friday Night Lights videos coming out every week from Amazing Lights, and just people posting crazily all over the internet on YouTube with their videos and stuff. And I don't understand why we ever moved away from there. It's weird.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have lost a lot of support from the industry, and it's not to say that they've abandoned us. I think it sounds harsh when I initially say it, but what I mean is that, like I said, you had these guys posting content and like official content on a really consistent basis, and I understand a lot of the focus has turned to bigger events and stuff like that. So I feel like it's kind of forced the individuals, especially sponsors, to post a lot of the main contents. You have people like Jest, Flow, Puppet, and a lot of the other sponsors from other companies, from Futuristic Lights. You had you had Goon, people on LED, such as Michael Horvath, who had to post as much personal content as possible, and they were doing it on their own in their bedrooms and stuff like that. And you have the culture shifting over to using Facebook, which made everything a lot more concentrated and in a way easier to find, I guess, because all you had to do was rely on a single feed. But I feel like it kind of the curated aspect of gloving videos. Like, you had like different channels that you were hip to. You had boss videos, you had the videos coming from IGC and stuff like that. And there's a reason why YouTube is prime for video content, whereas Facebook is a little more versatile in the types of content that they have, but the way they present it is all in a news feed, so it's easy to miss a bunch of stuff. Whereas if you have it on YouTube, it's possible for the curators to kind of present them so that when you log on, you're like, oh my god, look at all these videos, and they're all just ready for me on this channel or in this playlist. So I feel like that's something that's been lost, honestly, and it's made it harder for newer people to engage, and also for current sponsors and people really trying to push the game to be able to really put their stuff out there.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. And I never really took that into account before. That not necessarily like just moving away from YouTube and going on to Facebook and stuff like that, but just the whole dichotomy that when we were first using YouTube was just solely on just putting out videos. When you go on YouTube now, people are posting polls. If they have a channel, they're like, "Hey, I want to do something on this type of video. What do you guys want to see?" And they will have a poll, and people are literally voting. They're actually posting, like not necessarily statuses, but they're posting, posts of like, "Hey, we're going off to do this in this state or whatnot." Like, I watch a lot of writing channels. I watch a couple of Yu-Gi-Oh channels just for purely entertainment value, because I think the guys who create their videos are just hilarious and make great content. But they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna get ready to go to Dallas for a major event and stuff like that. And so I feel like YouTube has evolved to accommodate what Facebook has been doing for us as a community. And I just kind of wish that when it comes to the companies, like Futuristic Lights has been working hard on it, and I know when it comes to Amazing Lights and their marketing team, holy crap, are they just like a brutal force of marketing. But I feel like if we actually kind of work our way back towards using YouTube and making channels for gloving channels, and actually having not necessarily just like a channel for like just competitions or stuff like that, but actually just having regular channels of content creators using YouTube to help bring us back there, I think that would be one step we can actually make.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially since the one thing I don't like about Facebook is that it kind of keeps you within these bubbles that it's not impossible to get in. In fact, it's not very hard, but it's something that you have to know about. Like, you have to know what the Glover's Lounge is, and you have to request getting in. And then, even though it's very unlikely that you're going to be rejected, it's still kind of a weird barrier in a way. It's still like a couple of steps that you have to take. And whereas YouTube, you can immediately just go on and click on a video. And I understand where Facebook has its advantages. It kind of this global network that at the same time kind of feels like basically like a clubhouse where people just come through like in their free time, and whoever's there when you're there, you can chat up, and you can make friends, and it creates a much more intimate feel.
Yeah.
But I feel like it does not serve the purpose of expanding the art. And I feel like if people posted more on YouTube, it would definitely be much more accessible for someone who doesn't know anything about gloving, just coming across it on the internet. But I also understand why it's difficult, because as glovers, we're hobbyists, and a lot of us just want to throw down the camera and just record a quick show to it, and then just post it immediately, where it's really hard in the current YouTube landscape to be like a small-time dude just doing something out of your bedroom, especially since the culture has advanced so much. You got guys really thinking about the thumbnails to grab your attention, people really focusing on the titles, and the editing. So it's like, I can totally see just from a random person just coming across one of our bedroom light shows, just being like, this is cool, but it's not gonna retain my attention. It's kind of why project videos, I think, are so important in getting people into the art, because it's flashy, like you got a lot of these cool cuts and cool edits, you got a cool story that's going on, you got these really dope locations, and it works a little more towards the current YouTube landscape. And I think that's what a lot of people have a hard time grasping right now, if you're just want to get into the culture rather than focusing on trying to the rest of the understand and learn about who we are.
Oh yeah, well, and there's we do have strides. Like, there's YouGotMoves.com, which is what I consider the gloving e-learning academy. Like, if you want to learn gloving, which I really feel like they're I try to reference that website as much as I can, just so there's exposure to it. And I know there's like you have like the top well-known glovers around the country and around the world working on this project. You have Ice Cream Teddy, you have Jess, you have Puppet, you have all these different people who are willing to actually spend time with individuals and work with them one-on-one. And I feel like if we can actually get them exposed more as we try to expose gloving to the outside world, then we'll actually get these very, very powerful people actually getting a lot of content out. And when it comes to YouTube and how YouTube really gives you like the guidelines of how to make a proper video, quote unquote, from their perspective, you have to have something happening within the first 15 seconds to grab the audience attention. And with project videos, I feel like we're accomplishing that, and it gives you a sense of, okay, people are actually putting a lot more time into this than just setting up a camera, sitting in my bedroom, and just doing a light show with, basic dollar store lights equipment that people buy from time to time. Like, oh man, I can't tell you the number of videos I have with like the crappy dollar store stuff that I have sitting around the house. Oh man.
Hey, the crappy dollar store stuff, like, honestly, if you're a young filmmaker just trying to, like, try anything, like, it's the best place to go. That and Party City, honestly. I can
Yeah.
tell you that those two places have helped me so much in my project videos. In fact, in one of my videos, we went there specifically to get body parts.
Oh.
Yeah, like, it's great. This is one scene where I chop off the opponent's hands, and that's directly a prop straight out of Party City.
Yeah, and I think that's what, again, that's what I love about your videos is that you go beyond just, you know, doing a performance and having this really cool song that you can do a dance to and stuff. You're actually bringing a more of a what's the word I want to use? Not as much as like storytelling, but you are providing an overall narrative that goes just beyond just, you know, the craft of gloving to, you know, showing that it's more, you know, just kind of like a way of life, you know, and a way to express yourself not only just by moving your hands, but to actually, you know, record and edit and do all these awesome, funny, cool things on a video. That's why I love so much about your videos, is that you can just tell how much fun you're having.
I mean, I definitely Tino approach to making my videos. Apparently, I don't know if he still does this, but there was a while ago, he had an interview where he said, "Yeah, I like to constantly through. I just like to yell intermittently. And why do we do this?" And the entire crew will look at him and say, "Because we love making movies." And that's basically the spirit in which I try to go into all of my project videos.
Oh yeah, and that's why I feel like a lot of people are about a lot of the content they create. Like for me, I really try to be as open and engaging as much as possible with my audience and try to get them to engage with me, because I like to have these discussions. Like you and I will sit here for like hours just talking about gloving and all these different aspects, you know, with like theatrics or showmanship and, you know, all these different archetypes that we have going on in the world with like conjuring and impacting and stuff like that. And so it's nice to see the level of dedication that goes into a video about gloving with the production quality. Even though I know that, you know, some people might say, "Oh wow, this is such high production, it might take them days." No, there's actually, you can pull off and make it look high production without doing so much work. And that's what I really like to see, is that you're not putting in so much effort to make this, you know, or spending hundreds of dollars just to make this look really good. You're just doing the best you can with what you have, and it still comes out good. Like your tutorial videos, I laugh every time, because you actually taken the time to actually bring in the comedy of it all with like just your and you just have like it spelled out and like zoom in your face. Like it's perfect. I love it.
Yeah, and you know, I know there are some of us, especially, you know, like I keep referencing, like a Puppet and the cinema team over at Amazing when they were doing project videos. But I spent the last couple of years trying to expand my equipment and my gear and stuff like that, and that's why you're getting a lot more, like, you can see the increase in production value. But back in my Fable 3 days, I really didn't have those things. A lot of that stuff was really cheap, and still I feel like those are the videos that at the current moment I'm most remembered for, that way, in a certain sense, since it is kind of proof that, like, all you really need is the dedication and the motivation and drive to say, "Hey, I have this really cool idea and I have this vision in my head and I want to make it a reality. And I may not have the best equipment, I might not even really know what I'm doing, but I definitely have the willpower to make it happen." And I feel like that's really all you need. Well, I would say also it'd be nice to have a couple of really awesome friends who are willing to help you out with what you're doing. Because honestly, Fable couldn't have happened. And even today, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't for the fact that I have a couple friends who, even if they aren't into gloving, they're like, "Yeah, let's make some cool videos. Like let's make some movies." It's 16-yard movie spirit that I think I still have within my soul that makes what I do possible today. And it's something that I would really love to instill upon other people.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. I remember like me going through high school. I had a movie making craze. Like I wanted to make like an internet TV show. Um, I don't know if you ever saw this. It's a Canada-based show called Pure Ownage, but it's spelled Pwnage.
No, I never did.
Yeah, it's a really old internet show that I was introduced to by a friend of mine, and it was funny, and you know the production quality wasn't super great, but I really liked the narrative that they were going with. It was quite hilarious because it was about gamers and how gamers play on the computers and stuff and like consoles and all that stuff, and it was great. And there was some interesting narratives that they were pulling off with like a mysterious organization that are like trying to take him down and like trying to find who the master was and all that stuff. It's great. I thought it was good quality stuff. So I don't know if it's still on YouTube, but if it still is, I definitely recommend watching it. I know after like their first or second season, they were actually getting picked up by Canadian TV to actually bring it to mainstream TV, or network TV, I should probably say. So definitely recommend watching it if you haven't seen it.
Sure, Ownage, and actually, another person that comes to mind in terms of you can do a lot with very little production value would be Filthy Frank. Actually, if you think about it, he had a lot going on. Yeah, if you really look at his videos from a continuous standpoint, like from beginning to end. Now, personally, I haven't done this, but I've had to fill in some of my gaps with research and reading up articles online. But he had like a consistent lore going on in his world, and don't get me wrong, it was bizarre and weird and existentially like not sound, but yeah, he put a lot of thought in a way into what he was doing. Kind of had that crazy nihilistic energy that Eric Andre does, but he also kept it pretty consistent, kind of in the way Adventure Time would, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I never even thought about that. That's actually interesting. But no, so let's kind of get through some of these questions that I kind of written down. So, for you, what's your favorite style, or what do you call your style of gloving? Like, for me, I call my style of gloving phasing, where I'm clicking through the modes as I'm progressing through it, and it's just kind of phases from one set to the next, and they kind of blend together in a very interesting way with like my color choices and the flash pattern choices that I make, and showing how you don't have to sit on one set the entire time, and where you can actually transform through different sets to actually accentuate certain parts of the song.
Absolutely. So I would say that my favorite styles, on a purely gloving level, like if we're just looking at the technicality of all, I love tech. I love clean angles. I love the different geometries that people make. I love how technical that people. But I would say that at the same time, my interest really at the end of the day to theatrics. I know a lot of people say that they see my shows as storytelling or showmanship, and I definitely think I use those elements a lot, but I would say right now specifically, a lot of my interest comes to theatrics. How one can bring elements of performance and of like real world actions and change them, convert them, and use these actions to kind of bring a gloving flavor to these actions, and then mix them in with your regular shows and elevating your show to a new level. I think it does a lot for especially people who've never really watched gloving before, because how technical you are right now in the moves that you're doing. They may not understand what exactly is happening, but with theatrics, that's something that they can identify with, and they'll be like, oh, he's shooting a gun, or oh, he's cutting down an enemy, or oh, he's flying in an airplane, and they could use that to kind of use what they know about the world and get a sense for your light show. It brings a lot of tone, a lot of emotion,
Oh yeah.
and it'll level beyond gloving.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And it was funny too because when you actually posted your gun tutorial, when you actually said the word animation, it just like clicked in my head like, oh my god, that's a topic I never really actually covered, of just taking the idea of animation and bringing it into gloving to a sense. And you, first of all, you actually did that with your gun tutorial, and I feel like I'm hoping and I'm praying that this will open people's eyes to like, oh my gosh, actually, you know what? We can actually study animation and understand how animators, like, especially either in Japan or over here in the West, how they actually work on making that come to life, and being able to bring that into gloving, I feel will be like the next step as well. So that's why I got really, really excited about when you actually said animation. I'm like, oh my god, I can talk about animation. This is great.
Yeah, for sure. And it's weird because as we have a tool that emphasizes animation. In fact, I know there's a reason why there's such a disconnect between finger shows and light shows, because the gloves literally change the way you move, especially depending on what strobe pattern you're using. If you're using a blinkier set, you feel a little quicker, a little faster. And if you're using a thicker strobe set or using ribbons or tracers, you get kind of a heavier feel. So it really changes the way you move and the way you want to present your moves to the audience. That's why whips, flails, and anything kind of like dirty where it kind of just looks like you have fire in your hands and you're just wielding it really resonates with the audience, because you literally have a technological paintbrush within your hands that you're creating these images in the air, and you're not just relying on like the physics of your fingers to make these shapes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. One of the it's kind of funny when you said that it's like a technological paintbrush in your hands. It reminded me of what Munch said so long ago, that our hands are the paintbrush and darkness is our canvas. And that's how we create art. Create our art. And
Absolutely.
I think that it's so funny that you said that though. One of the things that I really was starting to take in consideration is like, when it comes between finger shows and light shows, there are certain things that just don't translate from a finger show to a light show. Like, certain shapes that really are being accentuated. Like, I would, not knocking on this because I actually like this concept, but clocking, for example, with when you have all the loops and stuff, with the lights being where they are, they don't really accentuate how your fingers are making those shapes. So unless you actually are putting lights in certain places to help show those forms and show those shapes of your fingers, you kind of lose some of that in your translation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can definitely understand. And I mean, in my opinion, you have certain guys like Mez, Robin, who have really used it to define their style. So they've put a lot of effort into making it work in their light shows. And in those cases, I think it works great. But I think if you haven't put enough skill points into those archetypes, it doesn't translate as well. Again, like it's a different beast, even if they're similar. And unless you've really worked hard to make those concepts work for your light shows, it like you said, it doesn't translate as well. It makes it harder. And I understand, because with the lights, they create focal points on what you're looking at, as opposed to looking at the whole shape.
I'm so glad
but
you figured that out as well.
Yeah. I think that clocking is something that still works for gloving. It's just something that we as a culture need to think about differently. I think, like I said, Robin and Mez have really figured it out. But I think it's up to the rest of us to see how not only will it work collectively, but start to figure out how our individual hands, because all of our hands are so unique, we can shape ourselves and adapt it to a style that really like shows off what it can be in the gloving sphere.
Yeah, and shout out to Mez and shout out to Robin. You guys are absolutely amazing. You guys are huge pioneers into your own archetypes. Like, one of my favorite things, especially when it comes to teleporting, is it literally changes the dynamic of how somebody needs to approach their light show. Instead of being a proactive type of archetype, you're actually being more of a reactive archetype where you're actually reacting to the music instead of anticipating what the music is doing. And I find that so fascinating as such a very unique archetype that has come to fruition through the accelerometer features and having, modular chips like that now. It really speaks volumes of how people really innovate and really actually understand how their lights work. And I just have to give them props for actually understanding and really pushing that envelope into new avenues that people probably never thought of before.
Yeah, about a year ago, I a teleport light show from Robin when we met up in DC, and I honestly think it's such an underrated and underutilized concept. Like, it's so fascinating and so cool. It definitely has an increase in showmanship when you do it, and it's something that I'm actually really interested in trying out at some point.
Oh yeah, I will. I will even tell you this right now. When it comes to modular chips like the atoms or the spectras or the elements or the kinetics, I'm trying to list all the ones I know it has the accelerometer feature, but I don't think I got them all. I think there are Aurora Ubers, maybe. I don't really remember. I have the atoms, and I've only been focusing on one mode that they have, and that's the Geo mode, which is like my personal favorite mode right now because I freaking love it. But what I have learned so much through the accelerometers and just their induction into the craft is that it really, really kind of breaks the mold of what gloving was into what it could be now. Just like using Geo mode as an example, I had to actually sit here and think about how I wanted to program my lights, not only by like just the color choices, but how I wanted to set those color choices in, because since it's based on a directional orientation to change the colors, I didn't like the whole idea of being monochromatic, or like all my up positions are the same color, all my forward positions are the same color, and all my down positions are the same color. It didn't work for me, because when you start going into a lot of the technical shapes with like tutting and digit and dialing, it just didn't mesh with me. So actually taking into account of like, hey, I can actually have 3 different glove set color sets within one mode if I just program it in this fashion. So like my up position, I think it's like purple and white, my forward position is blue and white, and my down position is green and purple. So you get this really interesting blending effect. And not only that, but like especially with a lot of the technical moves, just seeing like my hand flipping from being underhand to overhand, seeing that thumb do a reaction of changing of colors really actually accentuates the movements itself.
It's funny that you mentioned on the tilt function, because I feel like it's one of the most underutilized Excel modes. Like, I haven't even touched it, but it's cool when I see other people use it. But that being said, I don't really see a lot of people use it to begin with, and it's cool that you are. And to be honest, it really makes me want to dive in and at least see what it can be done. I can see a lot of potential from like tuts and isolations and stuff like that.
Yes, I will definitely agree with you on that. And it's just because when Geo mode was first introduced through the kinetics and I saw that, I was instantly like, I want my hands on this mode. This is the only mode I want to play with, because I just saw so much potential. Granted, when you saw the kinetics, it just like, it stayed that one color until you hit a certain point, and then it just snapped to the other color. With the atoms now, it has that whole chromatic blending effect, and I really, really like that. It brought a whole new level of attention from the viewer, because, first of all, movement is the first thing your eye is going to be drawn towards. But not only that, but it's going to see that change when, like, again, my greatest example is when you go from overhand to underhand and watching your thumb literally change the colors. Your eyes are going to actually be drawn towards the thumb because it's changing. And that's what I love about GMO so much. And I feel like it's so underutilized because people are not thinking how to actually, not necessarily abuse, but to really
take advantage of.
Yes, really take advantage of how that works. And really actually create concepts that actually utilizes that to its fullest potential.
Yeah, I could see totally a lot of people if they decide to take up like miming influences, how effective that would be.
You know what's so funny? I never even thought about taking up miming or any concepts from miming to bring into gloving, which is so weird because we use our hands so much, and that's like a prominent thing for mimes is to use their hands. Like, wow, I never actually took that into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that I'm starting to go down that rabbit hole because there's so much I think we can learn. And honestly, I think a lot of mine could benefit from using some of our gloves, especially like accelerometer gloves. I think that it'd be really interesting to see what they would be able to do with it, specifically since they, in a way, are cross section with like animation and showmanship and storytelling, really. So I feel like it'd be really interesting to give a mimer a pair of gloves and get.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. No, and actually, it's kind of funny that you said that it ties into animation because I didn't even think about uh, that, and I'm actually probably gonna actually probably use that as a reference point for people to understand how one can actually animate something to give it that life. Because I've seen a lot of animators, you know, the dance style of animation through So You Think You Could Dance, the World of Dance, all that stuff. And I even seen stuff on Facebook that blows my mind how well they were able to do this. Like I saw one guy like just kind of hanging out and he's like doing this show where he has a bottle in his hand and all of a sudden like the bottle's like floating out of his hand and he's like trying to hold on to it and then he's like being dragged away with it, but he's literally moving. But how his the mechanics of what he's using is providing this illusion that he's being dragged along or he's being floated along holding onto a bottle. And like it was absolutely insane to see how well crafted it was done. And I feel like that's the amount of dedication people really need to put into their craft, especially with when it comes to gloving, because you can create these amazing illusions that people will just be completely flabbergasted by.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly think that we're coming at a crossroad within the entire gloving culture where we're really starting to hone our base concepts, and soon it will be enough that we can start taking influences from other styles such as miming, animation, but also like b-boy, crump, and vice versa. Like maybe we can start seeing people understanding what exactly they can do with gloves and their respective arts, and also our individual techniques. Because I remember I was in a cipher with one person who was a liquid dancer and another who was a crumper slash b-boy, and my friend said, you know what, like in a way gloving's really cool because you guys already have the finer details, you guys just have to add the big stuff in, whereas for a lot of dancers it's actually harder for us in a way because we have all the big stuff but we don't have a lot of the little details. Like we're constantly trying to find ways to splash in our dance details, so the fact that you already have it in a weird way gives you an advantage.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. And it's so interesting to see that come into effect, especially when it comes to people from the outside of the gloving community and different dance cultures. You know, something that it was so interesting when I would even talk to like my husband, because he was a ballroom competitor. Like he was huge in the ballroom. He did competitions in
Oh
New
wow.
York. Yeah, and I was kind of shocked when I first learned this. And when he told me, and this was a long time ago, but one of the things that he was telling me about when it came to his competitions is that, you know, it's not as much as being expressive and standing out. It's literally showing that you had the skills to get these steps and get these forms down to a perfect T. And it's, you know, he says it's very rigorous how many hours he had to put in just to get like his arms in the right place, how he had his feet pointing in the correct way, and you know, all these subtle details that are so important in the competition of ballroom. That it's how I've always thought about when it came to gloving for me, is just like, how are people going to see these finer details, especially if it's somebody in a competitive capacity, like a judge, for example, is like, you know, do they have that kind of same mentality as the judges at ballroom competitions? Have their fingers pointing in the right way? Do they have the right angles? Are their arms in the right placement? And things like that. And so I find that very, very interesting when it comes to pulling outside influences to really kind of examine our craft in a different lens.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think honestly, it's at times like that that I really admire the other side of dance styles because we are very we're all about kind of, I'm sorry, what's the word for it? About how freestyle comes from individual expression and see how individual people manifest the same archetypes and concepts and moves, but it kind of in their own way. Whereas something like ballroom or other types of like old dance styles is kind of about preserving the history of a certain type of dance.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. Like ballroom, which is something I always appreciate because, you know, especially things like Broadway and the rumba and salsa and stuff like that, where you got a lot of energy going on with it. The illusion that it makes it look like it's so easy to do, but it's actually really, really hard. And that's one of the things I always use as an argument when people are like, oh, gloving's just so easy to do, you don't take that much skill. No, it takes just as much skill as like ballroom dancing, because I can certainly tell you that I had people in high school when we were forced, and I know people think this is weird, that yes, we were forced to watch West Side Story. I had people watching it and they're like, oh yeah, I can do a double pirouette so easy. They make it that's so easy, and it's just like, do you not understand that these people had like 8 years of tap and Broadway and jazz under their belt? That yeah, it makes it look so easy. And they'll like get up and try to do it and they like fall flat on their face, and it's just like, yeah, okay, sure, that was easy, right? You know? Oh man.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where, sure, even if they are able to get one move, however well or poorly they're able to do it, you also have to consider the fact that these guys are not only doing that one move, but they're stringing together all these other precise moves right on beat at the exact right time. It's why West Side Story and other Broadway stuff is so cool, because they choreographed it, because it's not only just about one move. It's not even just about how well you dance. It's about conjunction with the music and the rest of your. There's so many other elements that are considered when you're going through something like that on a much larger scale, and with much more precision, that I think people in the freestyle world, I mean, they might understand on a theoretical level, but they don't understand until they try to do something like that themselves. Which is why I have so much respect for any type of choreographed dance, especially like within the hip hop scene and contemporary. Like it's fascinating. I definitely think there's a lot to be learned as a Glover that we as a community can take influence from, for sure.
Oh yeah, I would definitely agree when it comes to choreography and hip hop, especially. Again, one of my favorite shows I like watching every year when it comes out is So You Think You Can Dance, and it's just because you got somebody like Lucas Brown who does these amazing, high energy, just bombastic choreographed pieces of hip hop, and every time I'm watching them, it's just so much fun, and there's so much going on that I feel, you know, if hip hop is able to become choreographed, because I know hip hop started out just like how we did, a freestyle, expressive outlet, you know, on the streets type deal, that finally got pulled into the studio and has been so refined and so well crafted, and, you know, been distilled in itself, and it didn't lose its identity when choreography came into play. So that's why it always annoys me when people get so vehemently like outraged when somebody talks about choreography and gloving, because it's like, I don't think we're losing the spirit of gloving when we bring choreography into it. I feel like it will solidify its spirit, just like how hip hop got solidified through choreography.
Absolutely. Actually, one of the biggest as a community is really solidifying our base concepts, especially on an individual level. Like, it's taken me years to get certain concepts right. It took me 4 years actually to get finger roll, because a lot of lovers will just practice, I think, on a casual level. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to put down the hours of dedication they're putting into it, but I think it's a mindset thing that they're not going into it with this intent of refining a very specific aspect, and that's why I think drills and such are so. Drilling is really going to hone in your muscle memory for a certain concept or a certain move, and it's going to really help you clean it up so that in the moment, in the heat of battle, or in the highest moment of like pressure during a choreographed sequence, your body can do very complicated movements, not only fast but also very clean. And I think it's something that going forward we as a community should keep in mind when we're going into the lab. Like, we should really consider more drilling, because really that's what drilling is, a form of choreography. It's just not for a full dance sequence, it's more for a very specific part of a sequence.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think when it comes to choreography, and first of all, drilling is like the first step of choreography in my opinion. But I think what people in the community, when they get outraged about people talking about choreography, is that they feel like, oh, somebody just makes somebody else do it and they don't have their own way of expressing themselves, which that's not it at all. To me, I think one of the biggest challenges people have is actually trying to take these drills that everyone has propped up over the years and trying to piece them together into a narrative structure, you know. And, you know, granted, that's where, you know, we have things like transitions come in. And I don't think we as a community has fully honed down on, like, codifying a transition, if that makes any sense. Like, yes, we know how to do it, but we don't have, like, a term of the transition, like, oh, a liquid roll transition, or a, you know, a tutting transition, or something of that effect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely see where you're getting at, and if we're to close out the thoughts on like choreography and freestyle, they're both impressive. They both have their advantages and it's not to knock one or the other. I mean, obviously I love freestyle. Like, I'm a Glover for one, but I think it's the difference between being a wizard and being a sorcerer in Dungeons and Dragons. Is that one is a prepared caster. Like, you prepared for all these grand, amazing things, and that's cool for one. And for another, it's cool to see someone pull something just out of their ass, out of nowhere, because that's cool too. And it's whatever floats your boat. And I think there's a place for both in our world.
Yeah, and I will certainly agree with that to 100%, because, you know, can't remember exactly who it was. I want to say it was J-Big, but this was many years ago that he had like a group of Glovers go on stage and actually do a choreographed piece to a song in front of an audience, and it was huge. It was a monumental point in gloving history, at least to me.
I actually, do you happen to have a video of that?
I don't have it on me, but I'm pretty sure I'll be able to find it. It's not hard for me to find things. It's so easy for me to find stuff.
If you could possibly link me that afterwards, that would be awesome.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely be able to find it for you, because I know it was on Amazing Lights, on their YouTube channel, for sure. But if I can't find it there, I know I will find it eventually. I never fail to find something when I want to find it.
For sure. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, there's one major thing I know a lot of my listeners always kind of ask me about, and it's something that it's so hard for me to talk about because I never did any gloving competitions, but I have plenty of competition experience outside of gloving. Where do you feel competitions are in the gloving world, and where do you feel like we can improve upon with them?
Sure. So I actually, a lot of ways, the competition sphere is actually going very well. For one thing, I think the current IGC scorecard is actually the best that it can be right now. I'm sure that as the years go on, ways to tweak with them, but I feel like right now, at least in the current meta of gloving, it's definitely the best that it can be as far as our current knowledge of it is. I feel like in terms of competition spirit, it's something I actually love about our community as opposed to others. Don't get me wrong, it gets hot, it gets competitive. It gets intense, but at the end of the day, at least in my eyes, it's all love. Regardless of who wins or not, a lot of people are, hugging at the end of the competition. They're shaking hands, and my favorite part of a competition, to be honest, is the kickback afterwards. That sure, we just went through this intense battle, and now we're just chilling out. So I feel like most Glovers are good sports in the competition sphere.
Yeah.
And
I think what also adds to that is the level of stakes that are on the line when it comes to these competitions. Like, if we want to go towards like any esport, especially like Magic the Gathering, especially now since they've restructured their whole prize pool, there are people who are going to tournaments that have $500,000 on the line. That's really, really high stakes. IGC, had something very similar to that in terms of stakes, but that's what I kind of like about boss competitions, stuff like that, where the stakes aren't really that high, and we don't allow the stakes to really rule our mental capacity of how we should approach a competition.
yeah, and I think as these competitions get bigger and bigger and our community grows, I think a sense of sportsmanship is something that I want to continue as we go forward, because I've kind of looked from the outside at a lot of other dance communities, and especially if you go online, like a lot of these guys are amazing dancers, but a lot of them are also like ruthless in personality, and I mean, I get it because it's something people are very passionate about, but at the same time, like, I'm also thinking you guys are forgetting we're all people here, and we're all coming together to do this thing and compete, not only just to show off what we got, but because we love this thing in and of itself. And I think ego is something that, as a dance community, Glovers are actually really humble. And I think that it's something that I want to keep going as gloving gets bigger and we try to strive towards more milestones. I will say that one thing that I would like to see within the gloving competition sphere is more of a theatric element to it. I mean, this is just me personally, as we've discussed earlier. Like, that's just the type of thing that I'm into personally, and I don't think that pure technical gloving competitions are ever going to go away, and I don't think they should. But I would love to see more of like a bombastic kind of dynamic, like rock star element to gloving competitions. I want to see more exhibition matches where top dogs in the game go against each other, not necessarily for the glory, but just to give the people a damn good show. It's kind of would be the difference between UFC and pro wrestling, whereas one is all about the technicality, where one's all about the show. And not to say that I want these more theatric type competitions to be fake, but I want it to be more about the show, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's to me, what with all that, it really lends to star building, which I really feel we as a community should really actually start pushing towards, is actually having these star buildings. It's like, yes, we have Ice Cream Teddy, we have Puppet, we have Jess, we have a lot of people throughout the years that really got very popular in the community, and their star building was there. And I'm not saying that we don't necessarily have that anymore. It's just I don't feel like we're consistently pushing that, and it's kind of like one of the things I feel like in the future, hopefully, that I can actually get like enough funding and actually have the availability to do so. I would want to actually travel to these boss competitions and actually like have interviews with people who are competing, and then actually have an interview with the winner of the competition and how they feel about it. Literally bringing a face and a personality to the people who are in these competitions, and actually bring a light on the competitions that isn't just watch people battle against each other and then see who goes to the next round and stuff like that. It's actually showing their journey from as I like to call myself, a very casual glover. It's not which to me what I mean by casual is the level of investment that I'm putting into my work and into gloving itself. Like, the reason why I say I'm casual is because I'm not flying out to all these competitions. I'm not grinding my nose against the grindstone in these competitions to get somewhere. That's how I kind of look at it.
No, yeah, and honestly, if anything, I think that the way you describe casual, like I would like to see more casual gloving fans to begin with. I think that a lot of people get into gloving, especially the people with the star power, people with the popularity on the social media networks. We don't get me wrong, it's great to see people who are dedicated to improving their personal craft, but I would also like to see more people just invested on almost like a fan level, or someone just who might not practice gloving, but they appreciate it as an art form and they keep up with it. I met a couple of friends in Lost Lands actually who didn't glove, but they definitely loved it. And I would talk to them about stuff like jest, and I would talk to them about certain concepts like clusters. And they don't practice gloving like at all, but they knew exactly what I was talking about, and they could appreciate it. It's kind of like being a sports fan. A lot of sports fans don't practice these sports, but they understand it on a theoretical level and know what's happening when game. They might not practice, but they love the game all the same. And I think we need more people like that in the gloving community, honestly.
Yeah, and I agree with that. It's one of those things that kind of made me really evaluate a lot of things, like, coming from being a Magic competitor, Magic the Gathering competitor, the competitive scene compared to the entire cosm of the community in Magic the Gathering, it's a very minute. It's very corner case type deal, and granted it's very aggressive, and the meta can be very aggressive at times, and if you don't keep up with it, you can fall flat on your face at any competition. But the grand majority of fans who love Magic the Gathering are what they call the kitchen top players. They're the ones that just sit at home, build their own decks, and play whatever format that they want with whatever cards that they want. And I feel like that's where gloving is right now, and in terms of comparing the competition to just the rest of the entire community, where it's just a lot of people want to just sit at home or hang out with friends and just do what they enjoy. I actually have a lot of friends who don't glove, but have such a love for the art, and that, if it wasn't for them, this podcast wouldn't actually exist. You know what I mean? So, I feel like bringing the casual but bringing the casual audience out a little bit more and helping them actually be aware to the rest of the community is something I actually try to strive for. One of the many things I like to say to a lot of people who like to grind in competitions, it's not about winning or losing. It's about becoming a better person, winning or losing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of like the Rocky win in Rocky 1. It's not about winning the game, really. It's about winning life. And, I feel like at times people might forget that, but I think that's the way we should be striving towards at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, and see, here's something when it came to competitions and talking about gloving competitions, I've seen people who are like, I want to be the best glover that there is. To me, that's an intangible goal because, it's not really quantified. But to be one of the best is a good idea. That's a good tangible goal because, again, pulling back to Magic, there are people who are considered the best in the world, and they've only won like 2 Pro Tours in their entire career, and they only have about like 6 top 8s under their belt, and they're still considered one of the best. And that's where I think people don't really understand when it comes to competitions now. Now, granted, competition is still an ever-changing thing in the gloving community, but to understand it in that kind of capacity is really going to help shape how the competition scene should be viewed from an outside point.
Yeah, absolutely. And, things are always changing, and who even knows? In the next 5 years, gloving as we understand it we might be seen as very archaic. We see a lot of the advancements that we're making, such as clusters and stuff like that. We see that as really new and really innovative, but in 5 years, like, that stuff might be archaic, or it might evolve to a point where we don't even comprehend it if we were to time travel into the future right now. But
Well,
I can honestly say that.
that's how I feel about dials and digits right now. Because I remember when digits and dials came out, and that was the new thing, and everybody was all up on it, and it was just everywhere. And I just remember it was just like this whole new thing. And now thinking about it, how long has it been since it's been out? It's like 2014. I think it's like the earliest iterations in digiting.
I would say
And
a little earlier than that, maybe 2000, like 13, 12, maybe.
yeah, it's again, it's one of those things about the gloving history. It's kind of hard to actually pinpoint when something actually started, but you know, thinking about it now, it's just like it's been so ingrained into the art that people don't see it as this new innovative thing. They just see it as a staple of the craft, as opposed to like clusters being this new innovative thing. And we're seeing the thing that I love about clusters right now is just how rapidly expanded upon people are pushing it. You know, they're just trying to see how much they can bend and break the rules of convention when it comes to clusters. That it's very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I can honestly say I'm excited to see where things go from here.
Yeah, and it's funny too because every time I have these thoughts of like, man, did we finally hit the zenith of the craft? Did we finally hit the point of, you know, this is the apex of what gloving can make? And then all of a sudden something would happen that just pushes even further. Like, I would certainly say I was having that kind of thought before clusters really became a thing, and then all of a sudden clusters just broke out into the scene and just broke through the metagame and everything, and just, you know, really kind of dispelled my expectations of where gloving was going to be going next.
Yeah, and I know if we're taking an example, I think it was Wong Tong who was, maybe it was Wong Tong or maybe it was Hermes, but they were one of like the like original glovers who were literally just putting lights into their gloves and just having fun. They thought, oh, look at this fun kind of silly idea. And I think one of those guys got into an interview with somebody. I can't remember who. I want to say it was Amazing, but basically
Yes.
he said,
The third Art of Gloving video, Generations, they actually got Hermes to come out and actually talk about how gloving came to be, and he even said that I was the person that had the stupid idea of just combining gloves and lights together. That was it. And it was just hilarious actually hearing him talk about how it came to be. So to all my listeners, if you haven't checked out any of the Amazing Lights Art of Gloving videos, you need to go watch it. It is a huge excerpt on gloving history if you want to really understand where we come from as a community. Yeah.
absolutely. And it's so funny to think about because his reaction is kind of perplexed and also kind of shocked because he never thought that this thing would get anything anywhere. And the fact that we've come this far to his original vision is just, it's just so interesting. And I hope that we get that same feeling one day when we're looking back as old men, saying how far this thing we put time and effort into has come.
Well, even for somebody like me who's been doing this for a decade now, I started in 2010, you know, with iNovas and, you know, Micromaxes and stuff like that, where we were dealing with just very basic things and just seeing how not only did the concepts and the archetypes really evolve and refine themselves, but to see the technology advance so rapidly to where we are now with modular chips and programmables and, you know, just being able to actually integrate different things, and of course they're the different sizes, and just being able to change so many things so quickly now has been such a huge eye-opener to me that, you know, I feel like we're just barely at the tip of the iceberg right now, and we're just going to start getting bigger and bigger from there. Especially like, I think you and I had a conversation, especially like, I know how you feel about the programming aspect of the lights right now, how it can be very tedious, and we streamline
It's
the
so
best way we
tedious.
can. Yeah, and it's extremely tedious. I agree with you. There's and you and I talked about this, that even Zohar, the CEO of Futuristic Lights, him and I have actually discussed this in great length, that, you know, the interface that we have to use is the light bulb itself. You know, that's the one thing that helps us understand what's going on inside the chip. And he's even said that he doesn't, as much as he says that it was a very innovative and very groundbreaking thing for Amazing Lights to really push on the Bluetooth technology with the hub, he didn't feel like it should, gloving should be necessarily having to, all right, you get the gloves, now you need this hub, now you need a phone, now you need a computer in order for you to use your products. And I really like that idea that he, especially when he came to the ions, he said that he wanted it to be self-contained, but also pushing on boundaries like chip-to-chip communication, really helping streamline the programming thing. Because I'll even tell you, as somebody who programs like 4 different sets and then has to put them in each individual finger, chip-to-chip communication has really cut down on my time doing that by half. Now, writing out a glove set still takes me like 3 hours because I'm staring at the sheet going, what colors do I want to use? And then not only that, having to test what colors look good overall together and stuff like that. So, there are ways that I feel like the programming can be improved upon. It just it takes is just that one idea to really click. You know what I mean? Like chip-to-chip communication, once they actually figured it out, it made total sense.
So my favorite set of all time is probably the OSM2. It's great because you plug in use a user interface to kind of program your modes, and it kind of does this live preview thing. But even then, kind of a hassle because you see something you like. Okay, so you have to upload the code onto your chips 10 times. You stick them in your gloves, and then you test it out, and then you say, okay, this is cool, but I want to make some tweaks. And then you kind of have to redo that entire process. You have to go into the user interface, you have to make your tweaks, and then you have to program each of the 10 lights again. And it's such a tedious time. And as much as that's my favorite way to do it right now, it's a lot. It's kind of like what you said that Zohar said. We shouldn't need this extra periphery accessory to be able to do as much as we can with our lights. Like it's I don't want to say it's ridiculous, but it most definitely is tedious and exhausting. And it's kind of one of those things that I think make it harder for new glovers actually to really get into the art, is that you don't just have your moves that you're focusing on, you're trying to focus on your glove sets, and getting into that is like a whole nother rabbit hole to just go down and explore. And it just, the current way that we program, sure, we've made advancements, but it's still not what I would call user friendly. It's not something that makes it easy for newcomers to understand.
Yeah, and so like when I talked to Zohar, especially when I was doing my research on the ions, one of the major things that we talked about is what people have termed mode locked, where you don't get you get the 8 modes, but you can't change them around like how like the chroma controls or the atoms or the spectras or I think the elements also had that feature too, where you can actually just change up whatever modes that you want, and they're all mode locked. And the way that he went about it is that he had the newcomer glover in mind, and he didn't want to bombard a new glover with so many of these features like, oh yeah, you can choose all these colors and you have all these brightness and stuff like that, and then now you can choose whatever mode and what order you want. He felt like that would be a little bit too much for them to handle, and just kind of wanted them to be like, okay, I want to just figure out how I can program my colors. And he also wanted to make it very easy for them with the randomizer. I actually like the randomizer. I thought that was a brilliant idea, because
I think so too.
Yeah, not everybody's like me. Not everybody's gonna sit down and be like, okay, what theme am I trying to go with this glove set? Like, one of my favorite themes that I ever did for a glove set or a set of glove sets was Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. When I still have my chroma controls actually. What I did is I actually had 5 sets, and they were reflecting each temple in the game. So my first set would be the Forest Temple, then it would be the Fire Temple, then it would be the Water Temple, the Shadow Temple, the Spirit Temple, so on and so forth. Not everybody thinks like that with me, like I do. No one puts that kind of thought into their glove sets in terms of a theme like I do. Now, yes, there are some people that do. I think Acer is one of them. She's told me that she does that a lot. She likes to have themes with her colors, and I'm that type of person as well. But for Zohar, he wanted to just make it very easy for a newcomer to just, take the lights, come up with a really cool color set through the randomizer, and then just make it very easy for them to just program all their lights with the chip-to-chip communication. And I like that. That's a really great idea. And that's why I think when it comes to what I would consider probably the best newcomer set, it would be the Ions, hands down, just because I feel like it's the one that gives the most easement in terms of user interface interaction.
Absolutely, and I think going forward, we're still going to have those various levels of custom. Just because I am the type of guy who wants to go down that rabbit hole, much like you. But I also understand that there are people who just want to throw lights the second they put it on. They don't really even want to fiddle with. They might change one or two things, but they really just want to get in there. And I know plenty of people like that. In fact, a lot of times when I'm trying to get more casual glovers into the art, I recommend stuff like the Ions, or like even the Chroma controls, just based on like the fact that it's, at least in my eyes, like it makes things a lot, like especially the Ions, like some of the color patterns that they produce is just absolutely gorgeous.
Oh yeah, I agree. I will even tell you that I still love the Chroma controls. I got that when they first came out, and I actually got it for Christmas from my mother, which was absolutely amazing. Thank you, Mom. But I will even tell you, to this day, as much as I've had them for, God, I don't even know how long they've been out. It's been like, what, 5-6 years since they've been out? The first iteration of the Chroma controls. There's still so much I haven't tapped into them in terms of the flash patterns, because, you have 11 different flash patterns, if I remember correctly. And, there's just so much I still haven't broken through when it comes to the Chroma controls. But, having something like the Atoms brought a whole different, to me, just brought a whole different understanding of how I need to evaluate my lights, just between the induction of an accelerometer. And, I will even tell people to this day, if you're somebody who likes to program a lot, go with the Chroma controls. If you're somebody who wants it just really streamlined, go with something that has a chip-to-chip communication or, spectral level stuff. But, it's so easy to quantify to people like what kind of needs that they have with the products that we have out now, that it shouldn't be a huge issue. Now, I will definitely agree with you, if we have a way to streamline the programming process, it would be a lot easier for more people to get in.
Yeah, so as much as I love customizing, it can be tedious, but I'm one of those people who are willing to go down that rabbit hole. But I also completely understand if you don't. Like, humans, we're naturally very ambitious and very motivated, and we have a lot of drive, but also we're inherently very lazy. So I think it's just something that needs to be improved upon.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. I feel like we're making strides, and I know there has been rumors from Futuristic Lights about a new product that they're coming out with. They're still working on it. As far as I can tell, I haven't heard any new updates about it, but I do remember at the beginning of the year there was some talk about it on Reddit, and so if anyone, in my opinion, if there's any company out there that's really going to break that mold to really streamline the programming process, I would put my money on Futuristic Lights, because just from my conversation with Zohar himself, this guy dedicates so many hours just trying to make something work that he feels not only that the community wants, but to also take into consideration of somebody who's never picked up a glove in their life, and being able to just grab it and be completely fascinated at how easy things can be. So hopefully within the next maybe year or two, we'll actually hear something about user interface being improved upon. But,
absolutely, we're counting on you, FL. Do the stuff, man.
Well, that's the thing, and that was the funny thing is when I talked to him about it, I was like, your futuristic lights really changed the entire paradigm of what gloving was just by their introduction of the kinetics and introduction of accelerometers. You know, and then, you know, even when they did that, I was like, okay, there is no way they can actually top this. And then they topped it again with chip-to-chip communication, and then they topped it again with randomizer, and you know, and really refining on the accelerometer itself into something that I really wish people would put more stock into, and trying to innovate and utilize it in their shows. Because even from just my perspective of being in I won't even consider myself an old school or an OG type glover, but I know I am in the old school category. It's really kind of, I wouldn't say put all my skills and my techniques to an obsolete level, but it has really made me reconsider how I need to approach my techniques and my skills that I've used for so many years without an accelerometer, you know.
Yeah, and I really wonder where technology is going to go from here, because with the accelerometer, it really changed the way people like really glove. I mean, I know you got a lot of old heads who aren't really a big fan of the accelerometer, which is fine. I understand. But at the same time, like, it's just another tool in your toolkit, and if you really learn how to use it, you can really take advantage of it. And like, again, talking about Robin, he really took advantage of the way the accelerometer works, and he's made really cool styles such as teleporting. And like, I think will be really interesting to see where things go from here.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I would certainly hope that we actually get more archetypes, you know, concept archetypes out of the accelerometer. You know, we got teleporting, which, you know, even I talked to Zohar, I was like, when you introduced the accelerometer, did you ever expect that there would be an entire archetype style to come out from it? And, you know, he's like, oh, you're talking about teleporting. He's like, yep, nope, had no clue. We didn't even think that was even going to be a thing, and we're actually very glad that came out of it, you know, because it really shows that the capabilities of what accelerometers can do for the entire performance.
Yeah, absolutely. I think personally, like, it's definitely enhanced my ability to animate my theatrics. For example, in my guns tutorial, there's a section where I talk about the fact that you can use it to kind of emphasize the mechanisms and really make the shot execution more dynamic and make it pop. So I don't know. I'm very curious to see where things go from here. I'm looking forward to whatever innovations come about. Very interested to see what FL's got, because I know they're always trying to, at the very least, do something interesting, and they haven't really disappointed thus far.
No, I really think it's not like they set themselves to a point where they have to keep pushing the envelope. They just took it upon themselves that they want to do that, and I really enjoyed that. Not saying that any of the other companies can't come out with something that completely redefine gloving as we know it. You know, we've had that. Amazing Lights did that with the Bluetooth hub and the Spectras, you know, and of course Futuristic Lights did that with the chip-to-chip communication and the randomizer, as well as the accelerometer. It's just, to me, the way I look at it when it comes to these, especially when it comes to these companies, it's not like one's better than the other. It's just each of them, you know, cover a certain aspect within the community that it just depends on which one actually pushes the envelope even further. Because Amazing Lights has pushed the envelope a few times. Futuristic Lights has done it. You know, even I think Throwlights. Was it Throwlights.com? No. It was Orbit Light Shows. They actually had a product that they came out with that really exploded for a while. Early on.
Yeah, and I think.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say, I think people even forget that Amazing should be credited for tint control. It's such a technology that we take for granted now, but back when the original chromas came out, it was a huge deal. Like, people forget.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I even tell people about. Like, what the funny thing is, though, when I talked to Zohar about tint control and true brightness control, there's an actual huge difference between the two. Because if you look at like an Amazing product and you put it on a low a low light or a low tint. He's like, do you notice how you can actually see like little dots of the lights in there? I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, that's them changing the strobe stutter speed, as opposed to what they're doing is actual like brightness output in terms of luminosity. So, you know, it shows you just the subtle details that people, like you said, kind of take for granted. Because I remember when tint control first came out and how Sox actually demonstrated, you know, like the blue tint RGB strobe was like the huge thing for all the glovers back in the day, you know, and just showing how you can change it from this blue tint to a pink tint just by changing the tint on it was just a huge dynamic to me. Like, I actually created a glove set that was kind of paying homage to the OG style impactor set, where you had the index, ring, pinky, RGB, and the middle finger was yellow. But what I did is I had them all be the same set of red, yellow, green, blue. But I used the tint control to change each individual finger how they look on idle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so when they were all on idle, it looked like the classic OG set, but as soon as you start moving your hands, you got that whole monochromatic of just all four colors. And I still remember to this day people talking about it. They're like, yeah, I actually thought he had an old school glove set, but once he started moving his hands, it was all completely different. And so that's the idea I always try to impart on my listeners, is to really think about how, if you are like me and think about your gloves like that, you know, really try to understand how that works, and how, you know, color theory and tint control and all that stuff really wrap itself all into its own separate thing within our craft, you know. So I would like to thank everybody who has listened on to this episode. First of all, Josh, thank you so much for actually coming onto the show and actually talking to me, because you and I, we talk extensively, and, you know, I even consider you a close personal friend of mine, and, you know, I always enjoy our conversations. But for the people who are listening in, how can they get in contact with you? Where can they find you on social media and whatnot?
So yeah, you can get in contact with me through YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. YouTube.com/C/Steamboy Glover. My Instagram handle is Steamboy Glover, and for Facebook, /Steamboy Glover.
All right. So, to everybody, I would like to thank you so much again for listening. And if you also have any questions, not only for me, but for Josh, that we did not cover in this episode, you do have the various outlets you can hit me up at. Of course, we do have the gloving page of the Gloving Paradigm. You can always hit me up there. That's the best place you can hit me up at. I do sit on Reddit a lot of the times under the username Mutton Shop Guy, and I do have the email of muttonshopguy@gmail.com. Those are other places you can hit me up at. And of course, I do have a Discord server, which Josh is on. So if you actually get on my Discord server and hit up Josh from there, you can actually talk to him directly there as well. But Josh, is there anything else that you would like to say before we actually end this episode?
I just want to say thank you for having me. This is something we've talked about for a while, and I'm so glad that within the past year or so, you and I have been able to cultivate this relationship. I really hope that you have me back, but regardless, I'm sure I'll talk to you very, very soon. And for those of you listening, thank you for listening on this episode, and I wish you the best of luck.
All right, and that's pretty much all for my episode. So once again, thank you guys for listening in on this episode. This show would not be possible without your help. I love you guys, but I am your host, Peter, aka LPD8 Dubuque, and I'll see you guys all next week.